The more aligned you are to your values, the more at risk you may actually be for this certain kind of burnout. When your work feels like purpose, that same exhaustion hides behind meaning. Alignment without proper recovery is a straight road to burnout. Yellow lights are the biggest drainer of energy I see in high performers, bar none. You look at each yellow light in your life and you make it either red or green. You do not allow it to stay yellow. The most important thing you can do for the things you care about most is to take care of the person carrying them. This episode is brought to you by Go High Level. If you're a business owner who's tired of duct taping together 5 different platforms just to run your company, this is your solution. CRM, funnels, website, email, text marketing, automations, memberships, landing pages, payments, all in one place. When I moved everything over, I was able to cancel multiple subscriptions and save over $1,000 a month. And memberships start at only $97. If you run multiple businesses, well, they got you covered there too. High performance requires clean systems, visibility, and control. Go High Level gives you the infrastructure to scale without the chaos. Grab your 30-day free trial using the link in the show notes. Welcome back to another solo episode of Keep Rising with Kristy Kuhl. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about a topic that I don't believe is talked about enough in the high performance space. I got to say that it took me years to fully understand and to be able to package this information to you in a way that you can digest it easily and immediately put it into practice. What we're talking about today is burnout. I've seen 2 different ways that people typically burn out. The first one is misalignment. And if you've been here for any length of time, you know that I'm all about alignment. Most of my clients come to me because they feel like they're out of alignment, or they're curious if alignment, this misalignment alignment thing is the missing piece of why they're not achieving high performance or why they're not feeling a certain way. And really what that means is if somebody is misaligned, then there's probably a disconnect from their core values, the way they're living and what's most important to them, their purpose, their environment, a little bit of all the above. That's traditionally the most common way that I see people burn out. Now, the other way I see people burn out tends to sneak up on most. They're not misaligned. They're not lost. They're not chasing somebody else's definition of success. In fact, they're deeply aligned with their values and they know who they are. But sadly, they burned out anyway, or they were hedging towards burnout. All the symptoms were starting to stack up. Get clear on your values, build your life around what matters, and everything will follow. I believe that. I still believe that. But here's the piece that most people don't realize, and I don't believe that there's enough talk around it. Alignment without proper recovery is a straight road to burnout. Recovery is one of the most important and most overlooked components of high performance. So today we're going to talk about recovery, micro recovery, what actually makes real rest possible, and one of the biggest silent energy drains I see in high performance today. Stay with me, my friends. There's a lot in this one, but it is going to help you tremendously. Over my years of coaching, I've sat with a lot of high performers across a lot of different industries: executives, surgeons, entrepreneurs, sales leaders, performers, creatives. And early on, I thought burnout had a profile. I thought it happened to people who were grinding for the wrong reasons, in the wrong direction, chasing status, performing for approval, doing work that didn't mean anything to them. And yes, that population burns out. Absolutely. But then I started noticing something that didn't fit this model. I was watching people who loved what they did burn out just as hard. People who were fully lit up by their work, who couldn't imagine doing anything else, who had found what I can only describe as a true calling, who had outsourced and delegated everything. And they were living in their zone of genius, in their purpose, at their highest calling every single day. But they were still exhausted, depleted, running on fumes. And some of them were sick. Some of them had lost relationships. Some had quietly checked out of the very work that used to set them on fire. Not because they stopped caring, but because they cared so much and for so long without ever stopping to refuel. They were forced to sideline. Here's the insight that I want you to sit with, because it may seem a little counterintuitive to everything that you've learned so far, but I think it's going to make sense. The more aligned you are to your values, the more at risk you may actually be for this certain kind of burnout. And here's why. When your work is deeply meaningful to you, when it connects to who you are, what you believe, the impact you want to have in the world, the normal warning signs of depletion get drowned out by how much you care. Think about it. When work feels like a burden, exhaustion is easy to spot. You feel every hour of it, and you know exactly why you're tired. But when your work feels like purpose, that same exhaustion hides behind meaning. You tell yourself you don't feel drained, that you feel alive, and you genuinely believe it right up until your body or your relationships start disagreeing with you. This isn't a story about people refusing themselves rest out of some misplaced sense of duty. It's a story about devotion or enjoyment or adrenaline or achievement quietly outrunning awareness. You can't course correct a warning light you never saw because you were too engaged to look at the dashboard. That's the trap. I want to be really precise here because I think this distinction matters more than almost anything else in this episode. Your values are your North Star. They tell you where you're headed and why any of this matters in the first place. They're the filter you run hard decisions through. They're the reason the work feels meaningful instead of arbitrary. Values-aligned people move through the world with the kind of clarity that's rare, and that clarity is a real gift. But a North Star doesn't power the ship, it guides it. Recovery is a completely separate system. It's not fuel for your values, and it's not in service of them in some poetic sense. It's the operational maintenance that keeps you capable of continuing to move towards what your values point you to. You can have perfect crystal clarity about what matters most to you and still run your actual capacity into the ground. Because direction and capacity are not the same thing. Knowing exactly where you're going does not mean you have what you need to get there. This is the piece I see most high performers miss, including some of the most self-aware people I've ever worked with. They assume that if the direction is right, the sustainability will just follow naturally. It won't. Direction and capacity have to be managed as two separate jobs, on purpose, deliberate, never one substituting for the other. Here's where I need to make sure that I'm really honest with you, because I've seen people hear you need to rest more and walk away thinking the solution is to block their calendar and stare at the wall or watch a movie or go to the pool. And that's not exactly what I'm talking about. Real recovery, the kind that actually restores you, requires something that most people skip over entirely. I'm fine with you staring at the wall. I'm fine with you vegging out to the TV. I'm fine with you going to the pool. But real rest requires discipline first, not the grind harder kind of discipline. A different kind, the discipline to get your work done completely, cleanly, with intention, so that when rest arrives on your schedule, you can actually receive it. If you haven't finished what you set out to do, rest doesn't feel like rest, does it? It feels like guilt wearing a bathrobe at the spa. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You're sitting with your family at dinner, but you're not there. You're on a walk, but you're mentally drafting an email that you should have sent. You took the weekend off, but you're carrying 17 open loops in the back of your mind, and none of them are resolved. You're physically still, but mentally, you never stopped working. That is not recovery. That is avoidance with a rest aesthetic. Real rest, the kind that actually replenishes your capacity, requires a clear mind walking in. And a clear mind comes from finishing what you said you were going to finish. It comes from discipline to work with focus during work time so that rest time can be fully, genuinely, ambiguously yours. This is why I coach high performers on their output discipline just as much as I do on their recovery practices, because they are not separate conversations. They are the same conversations. How you work determines whether you can actually rest, and whether you can actually rest determines how well you can work. The two are inseparable. Now I want to talk about something specific, something I see draining energy from high performers constantly, and most of them don't even realize it's happening. I call them yellow lights. You know, a yellow light is at the intersection. It's not red, it's not green. It's that in-between signal that means something needs a decision, and no decision has been made yet. Yellow lights in your life are the things that are unresolved, undecided, hovering, pending. The conversation you know you need to have, but you keep putting off. The decision that's been sitting on your desk for 3 weeks. The relationship dynamic that's uncomfortable and you haven't addressed it. The project that you said yes to, that you knew in your gut that should have been a no. The email thread you opened 4 times but haven't responded to. The boundary you've been meaning to set. The employee that needs to be fired. The tab in your browser that's been open for 11 days because you might need it someday. These are yellow lights. And here's what I need you to understand about them. Yellow lights are the biggest drainer of energy I see in high performers, bar none. Not the hard work, not the big decisions, not even the difficult moments, the yellow lights, because yellow lights are never actually off. They're running in the background of your mind constantly, pulling processing power, occupying mental real estate, generating a low-grade hum of unresolved tension that you carry with you everywhere you go. You take them into your workouts, you take them into bed, you take them into the rare moments where you're trying to be present with the people you love. They're always there, always idling, always costing you something. And the devastating irony, most yellow lights feel small. They feel like things that you'll get to, things that aren't urgent enough to prioritize, but too present to actually set down. This is exactly what makes them so draining. They're not big enough to force a decision. So you think until you heard this episode. But they're not small enough to disappear. So they just sit there running, burning energy you didn't authorize them to burn. So what do you do about them? Well, you make a decision. That's it. That's the whole solution. You look at each yellow light in your life and you make it either red or green. You do not allow it to stay yellow. Green means I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this conversation. I'm making this decision. I'm taking this action. I'm saying yes to this and I'm moving forward. Red means I'm not doing this. I'm letting this go. I'm closing this chapter. I'm saying no, this is done. Or this is not something I'm going to make a decision on now. I'm going to revisit this in 6 months. Both are fine. Both are actually energizing because resolution is energizing, regardless of the outcome. What's depleting is this in between, the maybe, the I'll think about it, the unresolved. Let me give you some practical examples of what turning a light from yellow to green or red actually looks like. Close the tab. If it's been open for more than a week and you haven't used it, close it. If it's important, you'll find it again. If you won't find it again, it probably wasn't as important as you thought. Have the hard conversation, the one you've been rehearsing in your head for 2 weeks. Schedule it, have it, whatever the outcome, you will have more energy on the other side of that conversation than you have spent in the 2 weeks of avoiding it, or maybe 2 years of avoiding it. I see you. Make the decision, not the perfect decision, a decision. Done is almost always better than pending when it comes to yellow lights. Perfectionism and indecision are two of the most expensive habits a high performer can carry. Simply let it go. Some yellow lights don't need a decision or a conversation. They need permission to be released, permission to not matter as much as you've been letting them matter. Some things that are taking up space in your mind don't deserve that real estate. You get to choose. This is one of the most powerful practices I coach, and it never fails to produce an immediate shift in someone's available energy. When you start systematically turning your yellow lights to red or green, you get back cognitive and emotional capacity that you didn't even realize you'd given away. Here's where these pieces come together and why I wanted to hold them in the same episode. When your work is done, truly done for the day, the week, the season, and your yellow lights are cleared, resolved, released, or decided, something remarkable becomes available to you. Rest that actually works. Not rest that's riddled with guilt about what you didn't finish. Not rest where you're physically present but mentally still at your desk. Not rest that requires you to white knuckle your attention away from your open loose. Real rest, full presence, genuine restoration. 1 to 3 days. The second type of recovery is micro recovery. You are being hit by micro stressors all day long. It's imperative that we offset those micro stressors each and every day, multiple times throughout the day, with micro recovery. The brief, intentional, restorative moments you embed in your day, the 2-minute breathing reset, the 5-minute walk, the transition ritual between meetings, go sitting in your car for 5 minutes, eating lunch alone without your phone, to chew and enjoy your food, watching 5 minutes of funny videos, a quick phone call to a friend that always gives you energy. Recovery cannot wait for the 1 to 3 day break you give yourself on the weekend. I purposely don't hire a dog walker for this reason. I get to reset in nature with Millie midday every single day. I usually eat lunch alone, no phone, chewing and enjoying my food. The discipline to finish your work and the practice of clearing your yellow lights, these aren't separate from your recovery strategy. They are what makes your recovery strategy possible. Think of it this way. Rest is the destination. Discipline and resolution, flipping those yellow lights to red or green, are the road that gets you there cleanly. I want to close with this reframe that I think actually creates lasting change for people who are deep in this pattern, the ones who are lit up by the work and exhausted by it in equal measure. Your values don't need protecting from your recovery. They're not in competition. Your North Star doesn't dim because you stop to refuel the ship. If anything, the ship that never refuels never makes it to the destination the North Star was pointing towards in the first place. If you respect excellence, what is excellent about a version of you operating on empty? What's the actual quality of your thinking, your leadership, your creativity when you're depleted? If you value integrity, what does it look like when exhaustion turns you into someone you don't recognize? Short with people you love, going through the motions of work that used to set you on fire. None of that is a betrayal of your values. It's just what happens when capacity runs out, regardless of how clear your direction was. The discipline to finish your work, to clear your yellow lights, to protect your rest with the same seriousness you protect your most important commitments, that's not separate from living your values well. It's what makes living them sustainable for the long haul, instead of just for one blazing unsustainable season. The most important thing you can do for the things you care about most is to take care of the person carrying them. If this episode resonated, you might be a great candidate on one work, or you might be a great candidate to participate in my 12-week Unleashed High Performance program. Links are in the show notes to get in touch with me. Keep rising, my friends. You are so much closer than you think.